why would somebody be wanting to share that they almost lost their job when they moved to a new city? Like, that would be embarrassing. But literally, I'm sharing this to testify to the goodness of God, because I could have lost my job. I could have, but God said no. Hey y'all, it's Jania and welcome to my channel. Happy end of the year. I cannot believe it's December already. Like, this year has just flown by. But today I'm coming at y'all with a testimony within a testimony. So if you've been keeping up with any of the videos on my channel about moving, you know that I've been working from home since August. After I started working from home, I started having some consecutively rough weeks in September. It was just so much going on. The company was going through a whole lot of changes. We were having to work with people in different divisions, and our interactions weren't always pleasant. So that was not great. I'm like, God, you know, whenever you're saying that it's time to go, I'm gonna be ready to go. It never happened to where God opened up any doors for me to be able to move. So I'm just kind of like, God, like, you see me here, like, you're not gonna help me out. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, I'm ready to go. Then October comes, and at that point, I'm just like trying to trust God and trying to have a better attitude while also like still applying to other jobs. October comes, and you know, the first few weeks were cool. It was like a little bit less stressful. It was more manageable because prior I had been working a lot of weekends, and they did not tell me when I started that job that we would have to be subject to giving up weekends. That was one of the changes with the company, and I'm just like, God, you know that I don't want to be working on Saturdays. I just moved to this city, and Saturdays would be my day to explore. So that was just kind of stripped away from me, and I'm like, on top of everything that had been going on, I'm like, yeah, this is just not for me no more. Towards the end of October, I ended up getting a message on our messaging platform from my boss's boss, and they were like, essentially, by November 7th, you'll know if you lost your job or not. And I'm like, we're gonna know if we did what? Like, seemingly came out of complete left field. So many crazy things happened in that. I felt like in that moment when I was reading that, it was like a God shift that was happening. I feel like you can tell when something is God and when it's not, because it seemed like seemingly they could have let it go to the rest of the year and maybe just keep us on to December and then like go from there. But it was like an abrupt halt or an abrupt stop right before the end of the new year. And I'm like, God, this is you. Are you saying that this is like my opportunity to get out, that you're going to give me a new, you know, a new position? After that burst of faith, I kind of went into questioning what was going to happen, because I'm like, God, you know, I would have preferred to already be at another job without the threat of losing this job, because, you know, I'm away from family now. I'm away from any other resource besides you. And in that moment, I'm like, God, you're going to have to do something, because there's nobody coming to save me. Like, you're the only one that can come and save me in this moment. It's no me getting myself out of this. I'm going to need you to move. And I also started thinking about ways to cut back, which these things are smart, but not when you're doing it out of fear and not having faith in God. November 7th, which is the day that they told us we would know if we had a job or not, rolls around. And I feel like right before then, I thought I was going to lose my job. If we're just being 100% honest, if we're looking at the odds, I thought I was going to lose my job. And I was like, God, it's okay. Like, I know you're going to provide for me. Whether it's this job or something else, I'm going to be good. So a lady from the company ends up reaching out to me and is like, we want to offer you a position with a different branch of the company. And I was really confused in that moment. I was grateful, but I was also like, God, did I not hear you right? I thought I was about to be out of here. Like, you know, I thought I was about to be somewhere else. But it didn't work out that way, and they offered me the job. But I talked to my sister, and she was like, sometimes God will give you manna. And if you know the story of the Israelites when they were going through the wilderness, God provided manna for them to eat every single day. And it got to a point where they got sick of the manna, but they were missing the point, like that God was still the one that was sustaining them and providing for them. And I was missing the point that God was still sustaining and providing for me. So I'm like, okay, God, I'm not gonna stop applying to jobs, but thank you, I'm grateful. God is just so good. So I ended up finding this job that just seemed really great, had experience, and I'm just like, God, like, this is the first job I feel like I've been like passionate about. Like, something in me is kind of like jumping up. I'm like, let me apply. And this was through LinkedIn. So a few weeks go by and I don't hear anything from the company. But then one day I end up getting an email saying like, hey, just go ahead and come to the job fair. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go. Even if I don't get the job, like, I can still network. So it'll be a win-win situation. I go on that fateful Saturday, and they're asking all of us that are there, like, who's been screened over the phone. And I was one of the few that like raised my hand saying like, hey, I haven't been screened over the phone. And I'm like, my odds aren't looking too good. If all of these people have already been like phone screened and I haven't, maybe that means they didn't want to give me the job. I just try to keep being positive and keep hope alive. When it was finally my time to go in for my screening, the lady that I was talking to was like, how did you find out about this position? And I'm like, I applied through LinkedIn. She starts looking through her, God is funny, y'all. She starts looking through her computer and she's like, I can't find your application. And I remember I was in this very same room when I applied to that job. They sent me the thing saying like my application had been submitted. And she said she couldn't find it. I said, okay. So she moves me on to my first interview. So I interview with this lady and she's like, okay, I'm gonna send you on to the second interview. And I'm like, okay, like, I mean, maybe I'm not doing too bad. So I go to the second interview and the lady's talking to me and she's kind of like giving me the rundown of the company and then asking what my experience is. And then she's like, well, I want you to meet the person that you will be working under. So I'm gonna send you off to the third interview. And at this time, y'all, if I got there at 11, it was 2 or close to 2 at that point. So I had been there for quite a few hours and I'm like, for somebody to not have had a phone screening, for them to not have seen my application, I'm surprised that I'm getting 2 or more interviews in a day. I'm meeting the last guy and that was the person I would be working under if I got the job, and he was asking me some hard questions. And in that moment, I'm just like, Holy Spirit, give me the words to say because I don't think he's playing. And you know, I just prayed and I was just like, in my mind, like as I'm answering these questions, I'm like, just let me answer these questions to the best of my ability. And he wasn't like smiling. He kind of had a straight face. Like he wasn't rude at all, but he was just very to the point. And towards the end, he was like, I don't want to be unprofessional, but I think they would be crazy not to give you the position. And I'm like, whoa, like he didn't have to say that to me. And it gave me hope, like, hey, maybe this is a new place that I'll be able to work at and to like grow in my career. So that day goes on and he was like, look to hear back from us in 2 days. So I'm like, okay. Mind y'all, this is like, the following week was gonna be Thanksgiving week. So Monday comes and goes, I didn't hear nothing back. Tuesday comes and goes, I didn't hear anything. And I'm like, he told me like 2 days, I haven't gotten an email or anything. So as it gets closer to Thanksgiving, I'm like, they're not about to reach out to me because they're probably closed. So the week after Thanksgiving, I end up just telling God, I'm like, God, I don't understand. I literally asked you, like, if this is not the job for me, can you at least give me a connection, somebody that I can network with after, you know, all of this is over? So it wouldn't have been like a complete waste of time. And I ended up calling my dad after that, kind of like venting some of those same frustrations. Literally I think it was 2 hours after I got off the phone with my dad, I get it. I can't remember if it was an email or a call, but they reached out to me saying like to send in my references and that they were going to be reaching out to them. So I was like, okay, well, that's good. Like they wouldn't be checking my references if maybe they weren't going to want to offer me the job. A couple days later, the lady got back to me and was like, all of your references checked out. Like we want to offer you the position. And I'm like, literally the same day that I told God, like, I don't understand why this is not like panning out, like why it's not working out. I'm confused. Literally, God is just so faithful. You really, like, God is like, I can't even put it into words how faithful God is. Like, not only did he bless me with a new job opportunity, this was all before the end of the year. And the funny thing is, I had prayed to God at the top of this year and I'm like, God, give me a new job, which I thought was just gonna stop at that job that I was at previously, like a couple weeks ago. And God just has a way of being so faithful, because I didn't even see this coming before the end of the year. I was hopeful, but I didn't know that this was gonna be mine. And it just reminded me back to the times when I was at my job where I was just so ready to go and I felt like God was not listening to me at all in me expressing my frustrations. But it's like literally looking back on it, he's probably like, hold on, like I have something better for you, but you're gonna have to wait. Me not knowing that my waiting period was gonna be that long was kind of frustrating at times though, especially when you feel like you're going through something and God is just not giving you an answer. I wanted to share that with y'all because even thinking about it too, one of the first thoughts I had when they were saying that we could potentially lose our job was like, God, you just brought me out here away from my family. Does this mean I'm gonna have to go back home? Like, what does this mean for me? And it's so funny that I went to the thing that God promised me first and started doubting it, rather than just like pressing in. I honestly shouldn't have been surprised that happened, because I feel like when you're walking in purpose and when you're doing the things that God has called you to do, that's when the enemy starts messing with you. When you're not doing what God is calling you to do, he already has you, so he doesn't have to do much. But when you're actually like walking in the ways that God is calling you to walk and doing the things he's calling you to do, The enemy doesn't like that. Why would he want us to follow after God's purpose for our life? And I really should have took that moment to speak God's word over myself, but I just went to questioning God. But then God is just so gracious in how he is with all of us, that he showed me like, no, I have you. Even when you're not at the place you want to be at, I'm still going to provide manna. Even when you're on the journey to get to where you need to go, like, I'm still going to provide. Like, that's who I am. And I was just like, ooh. And I feel like so many things have come out of this, because literally looking at it, like, if I'm looking at this logically, one would think I made a mistake by moving with my job being at stake. But literally, even with that happening, it also showed me that God has always been my source. Like, it was never the job that was going to sustain me. That's what allowed me to have faith, because I was like, it was never the job. It was always you. Like, the job was a means for me to, you know, be able to pay my bills and all of that. But God is ultimately the one that gave it to me. And I think what's so interesting too, with that job that my company offered me, it was only going to be till January. So I would have still had to have, like, you know, started working something out or praying like, God, I need you to move still. So I think even in that, God will even, like, he will provide like a safe space for you until it's time for you to get to the next thing that he has for you. Because in that little cocoon, in that little place where he was hiding me, that was only going to be temporary anyway. It's just wild, because one, jobs are not guaranteed, and you don't know what your situation is going to look like. You could be the best employee ever, and they could be like, you know, fam, we got to let you go. Come in one day, have a job, and you leave the next day unemployed. You never know. But it's so funny that in that situation, even when I was like, God, why am I still here? God was still providing. Like, he was giving me manna. And the crazy thing was, after a while, I'm like, I have to accept the manna and be grateful for the manna. But God didn't even stop there, and he blessed me with a position that was gonna be like purpose filled. I was gonna be fulfilling purpose. I was gonna be helping people, like a position where I could encourage them and hopefully touch their lives. Like, that is what I really wanted to do, and God still honored that. He gave me manna and then took me to the promised land. And I'm just like, so grateful. I wanted to come on and share that testimony, because literally looking at the situation, that could have been something that just made me like crumble and, you know, lose faith. But God was building me up, because I was like, God, you gonna provide. And then it just brings me back to the verse where God talks about how the birds don't store up anything and he feeds them, and how much more does he care about us. And I was just like, don't get me hyped. Don't get me hyped. He loves us, and he does provide for us. It may not look like how we want it to look, because me being at my company for an additional 8 months after God told me to move was not my plan. That is not what I would have picked for myself. If you're in a position where you're waiting on God to move, I want to encourage you, like, God can and will do it. If anything, the testimony that God has given me now about, you know, providing the manna and even giving me a new job just gives me like a better outlook and more of a hunger to pray for other people who are waiting for God to give them those jobs. Like, God really is not a respecter of persons. What he does for me, he can do for you. And then when he does it for you, it's going to be another testimony that you can share and give to somebody else that's just like on the verge of feeling like they want to give up. He has done for other people, he can do for you. And it'll look different when he does it for you, because we're all unique and God has different relationships with us. But that just ignited my prayer life to just be like, oh, I'm definitely not about to stop praying for the people who are believing God, because there was a time where I feel like I kind of got weak in my faith, and I'm just like, God, why am I still here? But knowing that God saw me in all of those moments, and he like the job that he has for me now was already like, he made provision for me to have that. I just couldn't see it, but he was already working on that in the midst of me feeling like, God, where you at? Yeah, that just gave me more of a fire to pray for other people. And if you really are going through it, like, God will do it for you. He will do it for you. Continue to have faith. Continue to hold on to God's words. How much more? If he feeds the birds that don't store up anything, how much more will he supply for you? Like, he just, I don't even have nothing else to say after that. I do want to encourage you, if you're waiting on God, continue to wait on God. Continue to surround yourself with people that are going to pray for you. And I think that was another thing about this job. When I got the offer, it didn't even feel like it was just a win for me. It was a win for everybody that had been praying for me. It was a win for the kingdom, because I'm like, no, y'all, like, come see what God has done. Like, this was not me. The people said, I forgot to tell y'all this part of the story. So the first lady that did my phone screening, I'm sorry, I'm gonna take it back a little bit. The first lady that did my phone screening said they couldn't find my application, right? And I'm like, that's weird, but I know I applied. The lady that calls, oh, it was a call. The lady that calls to offer me the job, she was like, how did you find out about us? And I said, through LinkedIn again. She said, we could not find your application. You can't tell me that God just won't provide for you. They could not find my application, but somehow found my email to send me the job fair link through, which allowed me to go on all the interviews, which allowed me to get the job. Like, God is gonna make a way for you out of no way. When it seems like there is no possible way for God to come through in that situation, that's just when he's gonna show out. He always does it. And it's just like, too, that reminds me, like, God will get you directly to where you need to be. Things can seemingly be going wrong. Maybe they didn't get your application. Maybe there was some information that was missing. Whatever it is, if that's where God wants you to be, he's gonna provide provision, and he's gonna make a way for you to get there. So please do not give up. I honestly was gonna withhold from sharing this, because you would think, like, why would somebody be wanting to share that they almost lost their job when they moved to a new city? Like, that would be embarrassing. But literally, I'm sharing this to testify to the goodness of God, because I could have lost my job. I could have, but God said no. I'm gonna provide for you in the meantime, and then on top of that, I'm gonna bless you with a new job, all before the start of the new year. This, like, literally all glory goes to God. And it's just so funny. You can tell the difference too when, you know, we try to put our hands on things and it doesn't work out, versus when God puts his hands on something. It's so different. It flows together. Not to say that because we do live in a fallen world and we're like fallen people, like, life is not going to be perfect, but when you do something versus when you let God do it, it's completely different, because he does everything well. Like, there is no flaw in him. And I also want to encourage you guys too, if you're waiting maybe on God to open up the door for resources too, what are resources to the God who created every single resource? Also, it's so funny, because I feel like this year God has really been kind of like dealing with me about time. And it's like, in my situation, I'm like, these people are not gonna hire me before the new year. Like, I was hopeful, but I didn't necessarily think they would start me off before January. What is time to the God who created time? Literally nothing. He controls it. Like, he is the author of time. So literally, your timelines mean nothing to God. When I tell y'all, God has hijacked this year from start to finish in like the best, most incredible way that I can't even explain. But yeah, I'm just so grateful. And again, if you're waiting on God to do something, he can do it. And if you feel comfortable leaving in the comments like what you're waiting on God to do, so that I could be standing in agreement and praying with you, or if you want to message me, please do that, so we can be standing in agreement together and praying together. Thank y'all so much for watching. I will see y'all in the next video. Bye.